Man lives among shadows. He does not realize that these are only reflections, glimmers, ghosts of something real. He was born in a cave, and the cave became his home. Chains, cold stone, the language of shadows on the wall. All this seems to be the only possibility. He believes he sees reality, although all he sees are shadows. He mistakes the warmth of the fire behind him for the sun. He considers rustling sounds and fragments of voices to be knowledge. He repeats the names he has been taught with the confidence of a sage, not knowing that these are the names of shadows, not things. Plato's cave metaphor is not a philosophical abstraction. It is how most people live. We are born into a world that has already been explained to us. We were shown how to be good, how to be needed, how to be successful. We were given a mask and told it was a face. And then another one. And another. You did not choose where to be born. You did not choose what to listen to. And for a long time, you did not even know that it was possible to see things differently. Modern man is like a prisoner in a mirrored corridor. He revolves among reflections of other people's meanings, craving recognition and approval that do not nourish, but only tire him. His inner voice is drowned out by the noise of bright images, other people's voices, news, comments, fashions, trends. And they say, "This is life." They are even proud of it, not knowing that everything they consider freedom has already been invented before them. The role they play has been written by someone else. The script was handed to them in childhood, with lines, with pauses, with a finale. He thinks he is the main character, but in reality, he is an extra in someone else's play. For thousands of years, people have lived in a cave, and few realize that there is something more. But when one day you notice that the shadows are not moving on their own, that the light is distorted, that you have a longing for something you cannot name, then the rift begins. And then, for the first time, you feel that what you have been living is not everything. And not that. The way out of the cave begins with one simple realization. If everything around you seems meaningless, perhaps you were not created for this. As long as you follow the shadows, you are playing someone else's role without even realizing it. The truth is not found in the shadows. The truth begins the moment you turn your head for the first time and see the light behind you. You were taught to be convenient, not to be superfluous, to be similar, to be correct. These rules were not stated directly, but they became ingrained in your body, like the rings of a tree absorb the changing seasons. To be needed means to be approved, and to be approved means not to interfere, not to make noise, not to stand out. And you learned, first quickly, then automatically. You learned to hide your pain so as not to frighten others, to hide your strength so as not to arouse envy, to hide your doubts so as not to appear weak, to hide your true self because the person you felt inside was not suitable for the stage. And so you became someone, a role. First, a child who was graded, then a teenager who had to fit in, then an employee, a partner, a citizen, a friend. Each of these roles had a costume, a script, a set of reactions and words. But it didn't have you. You were what was expected of you. You were what was asked of you. You were everything but yourself. And if you ever started to rebel, the world pretended not to understand. It said, "Calm down. Why are you doing this?" It called you back into line, where a place was already prepared for you. The world doesn't like it when someone steps out of line, especially someone who remembered what it was like to be themselves. You started to return to yourself, but the world immediately made it clear that you would pay for it. With loneliness, with condemnation, with loss. And then you put the mask back on, but with pain. Because now you knew that this was not you. The whole system is built on performance. The main thing is not to be alive. The main thing is to be similar, silent, predictable. But this contradicts the very essence of a person. You were not created for a role. You were created for authenticity. Every time you feel inner tension, incomprehensible longing, irritation for no reason, this is not your weakness. This is the call of authenticity. This is a crack in the scenery. You don't need to cope anymore. You need to remember that you are not a mask, not a role, not a function. You have forgotten. but the memory of your true self lives within you. It waits for you to tear up the script and step onto the stage not as a character, but as yourself. You were not created to play a role. You were created to be. And when you begin to be, the performance collapses. And this is not a loss. It is the beginning of real life. But there is another layer of oblivion. More subtle, more hidden. It is not related to role. It is related to nature. Man has forgotten not only who he is. He has forgotten what he is. You are not just a creature with a passport, a name, and a biography. You have archetypes within you, deep forms that resonate with the soul. You were not created by accident. You were created to walk the path, to remember, to put your broken inner universe back together. Everyone has a role to play in the grand design, but not the one you were given as a child. The one that whispers from within in moments of silence. The one that waits for you to stop conforming and start being yourself. You were not created to conform. You were created to embody. You are not a performer. You are the bearer of a profound idea. You are a living form of truth, clothed in flesh. And if you live your life repeating other people's patterns, you betray not only yourself. You betray the reason you are here. Your true role is not imposed. It is awakened. It is revealed when you stop hiding. When you stop being afraid that you will not be understood, accepted, or supported. When you no longer need to be the way you should be. And then the shells begin to fall away from you. The growths burst. The roles disappear. And you remain real, simple, alive. Without excuses. Without masks. Without fears. You will not become someone new. You will remember who you have always been. Your forgotten role is not ambition, not a position, not status. It is the vibration with which you came into this world. It is what comes alive in you when you stop lying to yourself. You are not lost. You are just asleep. But if you are reading these lines, you are already waking up. And that means that everything can still be restored. Everything can still be remembered. Everything can still be chosen, not a role, but the truth. There is a power that has always been with you. It is not taught in school. It is not approved of in social circles. It does not shout, impose itself, or demand attention. But it is there. It is like an inner fire, warm and quiet. This power is the soul's memory of its purpose. You are not just a part of the world. You are a participant in the plan. Not an observer, but a builder. Not an executor, but a bearer of ideas. Plato's archetype is a reminder. Every soul carries within itself the image of the ideal. And the task of man is not to blindly repeat what is visible, but to awaken this image within himself and allow it to manifest itself. True power is not in ruling, not in subjugating, but in seeing. Seeing through the shadows, through fear, through lies, and not looking away. The path to yourself is not an escape. It is in return. In returning to the point where you were still real. To the role that was not learned, but was born with you. Your forgotten role is not to be someone important. It is to be yourself as you were originally intended to be. When you return to yourself, you no longer need a mask. You are not acting. You are breathing. You are speaking from your core. You are looking with eyes that no longer seek approval. You become who you always were. And in this return lies the greatest victory. Not victory over the world, but over oblivion. Victory is when you remember why you came. And in this memory, something awakens that never died. Your truth. Your essence. Your forgotten role. But even when you remember all this, the journey is just beginning. Awakening does not mean that things have become easier. It means that you can no longer live as you did before. You can no longer pretend. You cannot smile when you feel empty inside. You cannot agree when your soul cries out, no, this is not relief. This is growing up. Awakening breaks the cocoon. And you find yourself without protection. Vulnerable, exposed, but alive. Everything that used to save you no longer works. Masks no longer hold. Roles no longer comfort. And you are left alone. On the threshold of a new world. With your true self. It is the silence after the scream. It is the breath after the storm. It is not joy, but truth. Quiet, deep, like water in a well. It is an encounter with yourself, without scripts, without expectations, without makeup. And in this encounter, you suddenly feel, yes, I am in pain. Yes, I am tired. Yes, I don't know how to go on. But this is my pain, my tiredness, my ignorance. Not imposed, not foreign, but mine, and therefore real. And then strength begins to return, not like a flash, but like heat in the chest, like a steady light in the heart, like knowledge without words. I am alive. I am here. And with this strength comes a quiet but inevitable decision. I will no longer live someone else's life. I will no longer play games. I will not give my life to shadows. You no longer need permission. Not from the world. Not from others. Not even from your past self. Everything you need is already there. Inside you. Inside, where the light has always burned. Even when you didn't notice it. You go through your fears, not because you are fearless, but because there is something more important than fear. Truth. Authenticity. Life. You no longer adapt. You speak your mind. You no longer try to be needed. You are. You are no longer afraid of being different. You have become yourself. And with each passing day, you sink deeper into the role you were created for. You don't play it, you live it. You don't memorize it, you remember it. You don't try, you allow it. You become the one who carries the light, even when darkness surrounds you. The one who speaks the truth, even when everyone else is silent. The one who follows their own path, even if that path is not understood by others. And now you know, you are not an accident. You are not a mistake. You are not a broken mechanism that needs to be repaired. You are something more. You are the embodiment of meaning, a living idea, a spark that ignites the fire in others. You are a reminder to the world itself that there is something higher than fear, higher than power, higher than role. There is authenticity. There is a path. There is you. And one day, looking back, you will understand it was not in vain. All the pain, all the doubts, all the emptiness, all of it led you here, to yourself. You carried your truth through the darkness. Not perfect, not loud, but real. And that means you won. Because in the world of shadows, victory is not about becoming brighter than the rest. Victory is about not forgetting that you are light. And if you remember, you have already begun your return. And that means everything is possible. Everything is ahead. But awakening is not a moment. It is a journey. It is not straight. It is not smooth. It is not fast. It is full of twists and turns, setbacks, pain, and insights. Sometimes you think you are going backwards. Sometimes you think you are losing everything. But this is an illusion. Everything that falls away is not yours. Everything that remains is real. When you begin to remember who you are, the shadows come to life. They don't want to let go. They whisper, "You're wrong. You're going crazy. You'll be alone." And it's true for a short time, because the way out of the cave always goes through fear, through loneliness, through emptiness. But you pass through. You pass through the voice of your inner critic, which repeats the beliefs of others, through the fear of rejection, through the guilt imposed by those who are themselves afraid to live, through the tired role you have grown accustomed to, like old clothes. You go through it, and you become someone else. Not because you have learned a new role, but because you no longer need the old one. You begin to speak more quietly, but more audibly. You look more gently, but more deeply. You act less, but more precisely. Your strength is no longer in noise, but in presence. You begin to feel your inner axis returning to you. How you become yourself, not in image, but in silence. Not in explanations, but in silence. Not in struggle, but in clarity. You no longer fight for a place. You just follow your path. And you don't have to prove this path to anyone. It is the truth in itself. You notice how your perspective changes. How the world no longer weighs on you. How time flows differently. How your body comes alive. How your taste returns. How each morning becomes not a continuation of the show, but a new scene of authenticity. You are not saving anyone. But by awakening, You remind others that it is possible. You are not a hero, not a prophet, not an example. You are a witness. You simply are.
Real. Whole. Alive.
And one day you will look back and see that all the pain, all the darkness, all the loss were the path. Not a mistake. Not a punishment.
But steps.
They led you to yourself. To your forgotten role. To who you always were before you forgot. You were not seeking the truth. You were going home. And when you stand at this point, the point of return, you don't need explanations. You are no longer afraid of the light. You don't run away from the shadows. Because you are the one who sees. And to see is to be free. To be free is to be yourself. And to be yourself is your forgotten role. There is a moment that comes to everyone. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what you've been through. It's not a crisis. It's not an epiphany. It's an encounter. Without words. Without images. It kind of sprouts inside you. As if someone is looking inside you. Someone who has always known who you are. Someone who has never confused your essence with your role. Someone who did not give in to fear and did not compromise. That someone is the real you. He did not disappear. He was just waiting. Waiting for you to get tired. Waiting for you to stop chasing approval. Waiting for you to get burned by the truth and stop being afraid to be alive. Plato called this the recollection of the idea. But in reality, it is not a recollection. It is a return. A return to the point where you and truth were one. You were never lost. You just forgot what your inner voice sounded like. But all this time, it whispered through the pain, through the silence, through your dreams. And one day you hear it clearly. It does not call, it remembers. It does not demand, it awakens. It does not dictate, it warms. This is not a path upward. It is a path inward. You do not become better. You become yourself. You don't rise. You fall apart into what you were made of. Into pure intention. Into a point of rest. Into the inner light that has always been with you, but you turned away from because it was too bright. Too true. Too alive. The world built a personality in you. But your soul waited for you to remember that you are not a construct. You are breath. You are pulse. You are intention. Your forgotten role requires no effort. It requires no proof. It manifests itself in how you look, how you are silent, how you are present. You are like a fire in a clay lamp. Fire does not argue with form. It simply burns. And when you begin to burn from within, without shouting, without demanding, but simply being, then everything around you begins to change. Because an awakened person does not say that truth exists. He is the truth. And then, in this quietest of returns, you understand. You never played someone else's role. You were simply asleep. But now you have awakened. And from now on, every step will come not from dictation, but from the depths. From the center. From the light that you no longer fear.